how do you get back up into the polls and convince voters that you're still relevant and to elect you?
Well, I know you were an expert at predicting my rise 4 years ago. And you were saying 4 years ago how I was going to do this. So you were right on 4 years ago. So then again, I should pay attention to your wisdom.
I didn't make a prediction,
So
but I'm asking you the
all I'm
question.
suggesting is that, we have a lot of people that three and a half months ago, didn't predict Donald Trump would be at the top of the race right now, and here he is. So what I do know is that things are not going to be the same 3 months from now, 3.5 months from now, because we're going to go from a time when everybody's focused on national polls, we're going to go to a time when people are going to focus on one result, and that's a caucus in Iowa, where 20% of Republicans are going to cast their vote. That's generally the turnout in the Republican caucus in Iowa. I tell this story of a friend of mine, actually she works for me, and she has 5 co-workers, all of whom are for a particular candidate for president. And so she asked them, are you planning on voting in the caucus for that person? And they said yes. And she asked, well, have any of you ever been to a caucus? They said no. Then she said, well, you know what a caucus is? They said no. Then she proceeded to describe what a caucus is. And all 5 of them said, oh, we're not doing that. So all of these polls, all of these projections, to me, are irrelevant. What's relevant, and what I focused on last time, and is relevant again this time, is can you go to Iowa, and can you make your case, and can you do what I did 4 years ago, which is to exceed expectations. And if you can exceed expectations, then you get your passport stamped, and you get to go on in the race. And that's what the game plan is, and I feel very comfortable, given the response I'm getting in Iowa right now, that we have an excellent chance of making that happen.
With your fundraising numbers, do you think you'll make it to Iowa?
One of the things that's great about the kind of campaign I run is I don't need a lot of money, because I spend about 80% of my time talking to voters. Most campaigns, I think you'd find, most of these candidates who raise a lot of money spend about 80% of their time raising money. And that's a legitimate thing to do, and it certainly gets you a lot more national attention. What I found was that raising enough money to put money in the gas tank, have a robust and strong staff in the state of Iowa and in the early primary states is really what's necessary to be able to win the caucuses and then get the springboard you need to raise the money, build out the staff to be able to run a national campaign. That's what we did 4 years ago. I really don't think things have changed. Sure, there are more candidates, but I think the same springboard is going to happen, and we just have to be prepared to take advantage of it. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the evangelical constituency? Because when you ran in 2012, when Mike Huckabee ran in 2008, I mean, there was essentially one candidate really appealing as strongly as the two of you did to the social conservative, religious conservative constituency. Now you have a much broader field. What's it going to take to win evangelical voters? Are they likely to be sort of splintered among these candidates?
Well, I would just suggest that, again, 4 years ago, there were 13 candidates. There were 8. So it's not like there was, 1 or 2. And there were others in that field who were very much appealing to the evangelical voters. Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry, Newt Gingrich, or McCain initially. I mean, there was no question that all of those people in the race were very much targeting, particularly in the state of Iowa, where it's a very large segment of voters. They were showing up at all of the events like this. There was a very healthy competition for these votes, and ultimately, over time, they moved in my direction. But look, let's be honest. A lot of other people had a look by these voters until they came to us, and I think that's the process. I always say it's like a shopping for a new car. You go into the showroom, and if there's a fancy new model there, you probably want to take it for a test spin before you hop in the Suburban and drive it home. And so we think we're the F-150, if you will, of the showroom.
You were talking about Iowa, and there's Senators talk of Iowa, South Carolina, New Hampshire, all these. We have 155 delegates right here in Texas. I mean, that's a huge block. What are your plans here?
I actually spent a fair amount of time here. I've been here, I'll be here on Wednesday night. I was here last week, and I do spend a lot of time here. There are a lot of wealthy people in the state of Texas who are conservative, and it's actually one of the strongest places to be able to raise money. And obviously while we're here, last week I spoke at the Northeastern County Tea Party group. So we try to mix in, speaking to larger venues, as well as trying to raise some money. Again, all of these states, once you get past the first three, are important to organize, important to have, as we do here in the state of Texas, the people who are working for us on the ground and helping us on a volunteer basis. But you have to be able to check one of those first two, probably primaries. If you don't do well in either Iowa or New Hampshire, your chances of ever showing up in Texas are pretty small. And folks who have decided, well, I'm going to skip the first two and focus my attention on the later primaries tend not to get there.
Senator Santorum, Donald Trump mentioned that 9/11 happened on former President George Bush's watch. It's generated some reaction. What do you feel? Do you think that George W. Bush should be held responsible for the 9/11 attacks?
I think George W. Bush would tell you that the buck stops here. He obviously is going to take responsibility for anything that happens under his presidency. I was in the Senate. I take responsibility for what happened during that time. And we worked very diligently afterward to make sure that we would never repeat that mistake. It was an attack that, if you look at the intelligence, maybe had we had a little different view of intelligence and a better understanding of how terrorism worked, we would have been able to, the intelligence community would have been able to put something together that could have prevented it. So I think George W. Bush would tell you, yeah, I take responsibility. And he also took responsibility for getting the people who launched that attack. But to suggest or maybe imply that it was sort of his fault, that there was something that he did or actions he took that led to that, I'm not sure that's what Mr. Trump is saying. I think that's what the media is trying to stoke up. But I don't think he's saying that. I hope he's not suggesting that any more than he would suggest that somehow we were somehow complicit with it. This was a new threat, a threat that hopefully we've learned from the experience, a horrible experience we had to endure.
Mr. Senator, as a senior in high school, the cost of higher education is continually rising. If you were elected to office, what programs or policies would you enact to make sure that an easy education is accessible for everyone?
Well, what we've done as a federal government in providing grants and loans is dramatically increase the cost of education. There's two areas of the economy that have grown faster than the rest of the economy, above the rate of inflation. It's healthcare and it's in higher education. Both of them are heavily subsidized by the federal government. And so you have the Democratic candidates up there promising free this and free that, as if there's all the money in the world to pay it, and no one ultimately is going to end up paying this. 74% of Americans don't have a college degree. So what are we going to do? We're going to ask them to pay higher taxes so we can send 26% of Americans to college and pay for their college for free? I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's what the federal government should be doing. I think there's a tremendous advantage and a tremendous benefit for people to go to college, and they should participate in the cost of that because they get tremendous benefit economically from it. And we shouldn't be charging people who don't have that college experience for the cost of the education that's going to improve your economic lot in life. And so really the better question is, how do consumers of higher education do a better job at minimizing the cost of that higher education? I have a son right now who's in college, he's in four-year college, but he's taking a semester and he's going to community college at 1/10 of the price. And that is a nice break for dad. It's a nice break for him because he shares in the cost of providing his education. And I think you're going to start to see more and more people look at more practical ways of getting a associate's or four-year degree than paying a full boat at a very, very expensive school and having a couple $100,000 of loans or more when you come out of college.
Senator, so many voters say they're looking for an outsider to choose for president. With your record in the Senate, do you fit that qualification?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the outsider who's knows what to do on the inside. I mean, I came to the United States Congress, and ultimately we put the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in jail. We threw out the Speaker of the House of Representatives. I came to the Congress, and the Republicans have been in the minority for 37 years. And I didn't come there to be in the minority. And I decided to go there and do what some House and Senate members are trying to do right now, shake things up. Here's the difference. I won. That's a big difference. There's one thing to go out there and say you're going to fight all these battles and lose them. It's another thing to go out and fight all these battles and win them. And we won battles. We took on the establishment. We put forth ideas that had support not just within our ranks, but could garner bipartisan support. I talked about that downstairs. And they were ideas that allowed bipartisanship to happen. They were new, bold, better ideas of how to do something without sort of the hard-edged rancor that you see in Washington, D.C. today. So I would say it's the best way to find someone who's going to clean things up is to find someone who actually did clean things up, actually did win, and move the country forward. And that's why I said, if you're looking for an outsider who has the knowledge and ability to accomplish something on the inside, there's really only one candidate that's raised that fits that criteria, and that's why I'm asking for folks' support.
Sorry, in the past you criticized the public school system and promoted homeschool education. As President of the United States, how would you reform the public school system?
Yeah, I've written actually a couple of books where I touch on a lot of that and the problems within our public education system. I've come to the conclusion, I say this in my books, I came to the conclusion that the biggest problems that we have in our public education system is the fact that so many of our children are coming to school unprepared to learn. And it goes back to what Jack and I were talking to downstairs, which is the breakdown of the families. And if we don't do something to reknit the American family and create a more stable home, one that encourages and rewards learning and preparedness to come to the school with the ability. And we point the finger, and look, there are a lot of problems with public education, and we point the fingers at administrators and teachers. But the bottom line is that we've seen a dramatic expansion of the federal government's role in education over the last 20 years. When I came to Congress, the federal government spent 2% of all of education spending, primary and secondary, 2% was the federal government. Now it's 11%. And with every single percent comes a whole host of strings that teachers have to fill out paperwork and administrators have to do this with the money. And I think it's been a disaster. I'm for repealing all of those programs. Let the school districts be run by the local level, have more parental involvement in education, give parents a stake in the program, give them a stake in the school, tie them in. And you say, well, a lot of parents won't want to. Yeah, but a lot of parents will. And we need to change the dynamic of engaging parents, because the school system is there for the parents. And that's a shock to a lot of people. Why? Because it's the parents' responsibility to educate their children, not the school district. The school district there is help the parents. And right now, parents are pretty much kept out of the system, not in the really good schools, but in many schools. So we need to get the federal government out, bring parents in, and work to try to get the home to be a better place to hand off the child and have a more collaborative relationship with the school in that process. Take one more.
Are you surprised at how much attention immigration has gotten this time around, this early on?
I wish it would get more attention, because it's probably the issue that divides the Republicans in the field more than any other issue. I mean, if you look at everybody in the field, there's a survey that was done, that the only organization that I've seen that actually has done a survey of all the Republican candidates, and by the way, the Democratic candidates on the issue of immigration. And it's a group called Numbers USA and another coalition called FAIR. You can go to numbersusa.com. There's only one candidate in the field that has an A rating, Republican or Democrat, according to that group. And that's a group that focuses in on making sure that the immigration system in our country is actually consistent with what the purpose of an immigration system is. And I would make the argument the purpose of an immigration system is to bring people, enough people into this country that's in the best interest of the United States of America. That's what our immigration system should be about. It should be about doing what's best for America and Americans who are impacted by the issue of immigration. I don't think we should pass laws that are not in the best interest of America. Does anybody agree that we shouldn't pass laws that are not in the best interest of America? So this group looks at, as I have, the immigration system in our country, and not looked at it from the standpoint of people who have broken the law and what are we going to do about them, but the standpoint from people who have not broken the law and are impacted by the immigration system we have in this country. That sort of seems to make the sense as that should be the focal point of the discussion on immigration. And the reality is that we've brought in 35 million people into this country over the last 20 years, 90% of whom are wage earners. And so when you look at an immigration system, you would think, well, logically, who should we look at to see who is most impacted? Wage earners. And what is the state of wage earners in America today? Well, we have wage growth, the lowest over the last 20 years is the lowest wage growth in any 20-year period in American history. In fact, the last quarter was the lowest wage growth ever recorded in American history. We have, since the year 2000, the last 15 years, 5.7 million net new jobs created between 2000 and 2014. And of those net new jobs created, 5.7 million, every single one of those jobs is held by someone who wasn't born in this country. In fact, there are fewer native-born Americans working today than there was 15 years ago. So when you look at those facts and you say, well, we're bringing in 1,050,000 immigrants a year legally, 700,000 illegally last year. We don't enforce our laws, and American workers are frustrated, angry, a la some of the reaction you're getting in the Republican primary right now. The Democratic Party focusing on minimum wage. Why? Because wage growth stinks. Why? Because wages are being competed for by the very people that the Democratic Party wants to bring into this country in droves, which are wage earners who are both legal and illegal immigrants. And so I think it is a hugely important issue for American workers. You want to do something, to hear the Democrats scream and holler about the gap in America and the separation rich and poor. They're causing part of that by the unlimited immigration that they're bringing into this country and the stifling of the economy. It's a 1-2 punch. We need someone who understands what American workers are facing and have an immigration policy that's in their best interest and a tax and regulatory policy that creates opportunities for workers to be able to get good paying jobs and rise. That's why I'm running for president. I announced from a factory floor, and if we want to win Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, you go across the Rust Belt of America, where that impact is being felt the most. That's where the opportunity is for us to win this election. And that's why I'm asking for votes for folks down here in Texas. Thank you all very much.